Hi, everyone. Before we get started with this episode, I want to share something really exciting with you. I have a deep passion for helping people turn their dreams into goals and then get those goals across the finish line. I've just launched a new online, on-demand version of my program, Finish It. And as a special gift to Leadership Rediscovered listeners, I'm offering 15% off the program price. Go to wvshine.com/finishit and enter the code LR15 at checkout. But don't wait. I want you to finish your goals now and not someday. So this course is only staying open for a little while and then I'm shutting it down. Go sign up now so you can finish it. Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Mike Lee. Mike became the 100% owner of Freedom Kia in Morgantown, West Virginia in 2022, but he started in the automotive industry in 2001 as a sales associate and then moved into increasing roles of responsibility from there. He has a proven track record of success in his career, including just a few of many notable accomplishments. He's increased the net profit by 100% for the first year as general manager in 2016 while at Mike Kelly Automotive in Butler. He increased the net profit of Freedom Kia by 1,000, I got to make sure I'm reading that correctly, 1,000% his first full year as managing partner, and took sales efficiency from 87% to 155% and increased new car sales 174% year over year. And the list goes on from there. And we're going to talk about that today, I hope. Mike has also been married for 20 years to Jennifer Lee. They have 2 children. He is a first generation immigrant and is incredibly active and involved in the community, which we will also get into today. But just a few accomplishments there. He was recently voted in as a board member of the United Way. He's very involved with Chestnut Mountain Ranch, St. Jude Children's Hospital, WVU Medicine Children's Hospital as well. He has been the originator and sponsor of Free Play Freedom Day, which is super cool, and we're going to talk about that. And he's also currently collaborating with multiple nonprofits to create jobs and opportunities in the community. Mike's story is very inspiring, so I'm excited to introduce him to everyone. Thanks for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. This is fun.
I've wanted to do this for a while, so I'm really excited. You're very impressive. You're well known in the community for the impact that you have on the community, and I think you're a great example of positive leadership. So
I appreciate it. Well, it definitely takes a team. So it's everybody that's around, and it's the community coming together, and it's everybody that helped me along the way to get here. It's definitely not just me. Definitely not. Let's make that very clear. Okay. It's not just me.
We'll start with that. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of not being just you, can you talk about you for a moment and tell us your leadership journey?
Yeah. So, I got into the car business because I needed a job, quite frankly. Found a newspaper and found a couple of jobs. I was hunting for a job, and I had 2 opportunities, one in the car business or 2 to be a teller at a bank, actually. And the automotive, he hired me first, and the bank didn't.
Lost out.
So it just worked out that way. Yeah. I don't know if they lost out. Who knows what the journey would have been. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I started as a salesperson. I just turned 20. And had a ego that I didn't know that I had an ego. I thought it was just I want to be aggressive with what I'm doing. I'm very passionate, and I went into it. And my mentor and my partner that I ultimately bought the dealership from, he always told me over the years, he's like, man, you got to get rid of that chip on your shoulder. I was like, I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I don't have a chip on my shoulder. Mike, I will tell you if you're watching this. Yes, I had a chip on my shoulder. Okay,
he's admitting it now. Yes, he did.
But I recognize that, and you realize that yes, there's drive, yes, there's passion, but there comes to a point where you're like, okay, all right, let's have a little bit more empathy. Let's see what's really going on and open the lenses, right? Open your perspective a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it took a while. It took a long while.
Probably. How did that? I'm sorry to stop you, but this is so cool. First of all, I love that Mike gave you that feedback, because I think a lot of times people struggle to share feedback with folks, especially if it's something that's more constructive criticism.
Yeah.
But what did it take, or how did you, because I would never describe you just in our interactions as someone who has a chip on his shoulder. So you've definitely worked through that. But how did you do that?
It took a lot of time and a lot of great people that gave me that feedback, you know, and at some point, we all think that, oh, there's something wrong with that person, and that there's something wrong with the way that they think, and then at some point you're like, okay, if everybody thinks that you're nuts and you're the only one that thinks you're normal, maybe you're the one that's nuts and everybody else is normal, right?
This is a very important PSA.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, is it really me? And it impacted me. And I started just taking things slower and listening more, and, and not take everything so personally.
Yeah.
People have a different perspective, and just because they see it from a different angle doesn't mean that they're wrong.
Yeah.
You've seen pictures all the time of the old lady, the old woman and the young lady, right? Or the bunny and the deer, whatever those are. When you see those, just because there's a different perspective doesn't mean that they're wrong. And you don't have to fight to defend your side.
Yeah.
You have to listen to the other side and try and learn a new perspective, because if you do, now you have two angles of attack instead of one, and if you can do that, then it actually it helps you grow.
Yeah.
Right. And so it took me a while to sit back and go, okay, maybe people are right. And how do I approach this? And I asked a lot of people to give me criticism and a lot of feedback.
Wow.
That's probably the hardest part, right? Is to admit that, okay, maybe there's something. And I started asking more and more people. And, as the feedback started dying off, like what we just talked about, like, I don't know what you're talking about, then I realized I'm progressing in the right direction. And knowing who you are and understanding who you are is actually the biggest battle.
Yes.
Having personal ownership and realizing that, look, you have control of your life. Yes, things do happen, but you choose how you react to it. You choose how you respond to it. You choose what happens after that.
Yeah.
And those choices will eventually lead you in the path that, wherever you want to go.
Yeah, that's massive. You could end the podcast right now. We won't, but that's that good, because you're right. I think recognizing that we talked about before we turned the recording on here. I mean, life happens. We all have stories. We all make mistakes, but it's what you choose to do with that and how you choose to respond and act that you do have control. You have control over your attitude. You may not have control over all the circumstances in your life, but you have the control, at a minimum, your attitude and your approach.
Yeah. And, for you to, if somebody makes you mad, right, and it happens, you're in a line at a grocery store and you're already running late, and there's a person in front of you in the express checkout line with 50 items. Your choice could be, okay, I'm just going to get angry, and it's going to elevate your blood pressure, and then you're going to get even more flustered, and then maybe when you go home later, you meet your significant other, friends, family, you end up taking it out on them a little bit, right? So, or you're going to stand there in line the same amount of time. I'm sorry to tell you. Or you can be like, hey, let's see how I can help in this situation. Why did they go to that line? Is it because they're intentionally trying to harm somebody else? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think majority of the case that's the case. Maybe they're just as late. Actually, they're maybe 10 minutes later than you are, right? And if that's the perspective that you have, like, okay, well, how can I help this person to speed them up? And then I could keep moving forward. So now not only does your blood pressure not go up, you're not taking it out on your kids. Your blood pressure probably will go down. You feel better about yourself because you're helping them.
Yes.
And then when you go home, or if there's people around you that see this, they're going to be like, man, why is this person not irritated? And the influence that you have and I think that's where the leadership comes in, the influence that you have of people that see this reaction and go, I never tried that way. Maybe I can do that.
Yeah.
And it'll make me feel better. So you have the return on what you have is significant, and that is by your choice. Nobody else can make that decision for you.
Yes.
You have to make that decision.
Yes. And what's funny, I love that. That's such a good example, too. I'm totally stealing that example because I talk about perception and attitude a lot. But if you think about, you have the ability to decide, am I going to sit here and be angry and stew? And who's getting hurt in that process? You, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that person with the 50 items they're probably not as angry as you are right now. So, I mean,
Right.
it's like you're not getting revenge on them by being angry at them. And instead, you can choose to help out.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more people with that thought process and reframe those situations.
I feel like if we do that today as a society, the world that we live in would be totally different.
Totally different. Yeah. So I got us a little off track on your journey, but I'm so glad I did because we've got some really good life lessons and leadership lessons already coming out. So I want to hear, though, about your career. It sounds like obviously you must have enjoyed being a sales associate, or enough of it clicked that you have stayed with it now for 20 plus years, right?
Yeah. So, truth be told, right, I did take a break.
Okay.
Hated the car business. At one point, I got burned out because I was trying to do I was a salesperson in 2001. I had an opportunity to be in finance by 2002. Now, keep in mind, I just turned 20 when I started. So I was 21 as doing special finance. I did inventory manager / sales manager by the time I was 22. Then I was a general sales manager by the time I was 24. When I was a general sales manager at that store, there was 7 managers reporting to me plus 21 salespeople.
And you're 24 years old?
And I was 24 years old.
Wow.
So,
and I'm sure they weren't 24 years old, some of them.
right. And this is where that chip comes in, right? Like I knew everything. I already did it. I took the path and I'm good. I'm better than most. And I had that ego going and, don't question me, et cetera, right? And then I burned myself out. So I got out of the car business for about a year. I tried insurance sales. I tried my own business. Great lesson, by the way. If you ever want a humility lesson, that's start your own business.
Yes.
So, and then I realized that, look, I really enjoy car sales. I actually really enjoy what I did. I was pretty good at it. And I went back into it. But when I went back in, I had a different perspective. I act like you've been there, right?
Yes.
Like you know what you're doing. You want to help somebody else grow. You don't need to have that ego. And if it comes, it comes. There's been several times in my career where I took a pay cut. I went from a GSM to a salesperson.
Wow.
I went backwards on my career. I did it because it's a lesson in humility. Okay, if you're not willing to do the basics that your staff has to do on a daily basis, then you can't be a leader. I'm sorry. And I believe in a servant, attitude, a servant leader. So the higher you go on the pyramid, and everybody believes like, oh, the CEO sits on the top and is is just sitting behind the desk
Kicks
and doing
back
whatever
with their feet up.
Yeah. Well, so Spider-Man, when you watch that, right, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
So I believe the pyramid is reversed, right? And our consumers are at the top of the pyramid because at the end of the day, they're the most important. Without them, none of us exist.
Right.
And then it's the frontline employees because they have to take care of the customers.
Yes.
Then it's the managers because without the employees, you don't need managers.
There's no one to manage.
Yeah. Without managers, you don't need upper management. Without upper management, you don't need ownership, right? So we serve as an owner. I serve everybody in my whole entire field, my managers, my direct reports, my non-direct reports, and even customers directly. You saw the video, I personally drove a car down to Jensen Beach to deliver the car, and I did it because it was an EV and I wanted to try it out. But so I wanted that experience myself to say, okay, now I know what that's like. I can communicate that to my customers, even though I don't take customers day to day. When that question comes up, I know about it.
I know the answer.
Right?
Yeah.
I know what the experience is like. I know the struggles. But yeah, I took a few steps back and then had an opportunity to grow and continued my journey. And I worked for Lithia for a little while, a publicly traded company, a big corporation.
Yeah.
And that was a good eye-opening experience to see how a large organization works.
Yes.
And that was a great lesson that I had and love those guys, and they did a great job. I owe some of the knowledge I have with what they taught, right? And then I had an opportunity to buy a dealership, and I'm like, ran a few, I might as well try it.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the pandemic, my wife thought I was nuts.
Yeah, I did think about the timing
Yeah.
of that. I was like, that's an interesting choice to make.
Yeah, so March 2020 is when the pandemic, everything shut down, right? And August is when I bought the dealership as a partner. I invested into it
my
and
gosh.
to start it. My wife thought I was completely out of my mind. And partially, I'm not gonna lie, I thought so too, right? So, but it worked out. And I think it worked out because I trusted that my motivations wasn't, I didn't get into the car business or wanted to own a car dealership. At this point, I didn't want to own a car dealership because I want to make more money. I wanted to own a car dealership because I'm tired of some of the other ways that people were doing business. So, you know, the only way that I can do how I want to run business is I have to own it. And, you know, my staff, and you can come into the dealership anytime, ask any one of my staff, we don't sell anything. I don't believe in selling anything. I believe in helping customers buy.
Ooh,
So
I love that.
everybody loves to buy. Everybody hates to be sold.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So why are we trying to sell something that they don't, why are we trying to persuade them into something that they don't need or they don't want? I'm just going to be there to educate them and offer them what they have. And listen, if you want a Subaru, I only offer a Kia.
Right.
Cool. Call me. I'll help you.
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have 100% of the people come to me looking for a car and then me realizing, hey, I need to go get this other, you know, opportunity for me to build my business.
Yeah.
Than for only, you know, 5% of people to come to me because that's my market share.
Yeah. Like, well, you want a Subaru, but let me tell you why you should want a Kia instead.
I don't. I don't. I actually go through the Subaru, ask them why they want the Subaru.
Yeah.
And then I show them, you know, number one, Kia can match up, right?
Yeah.
But number two, if you want a Subaru and that's the direction you want, here's the contact, here's the deal, here's the car, and they'll even deliver it to you.
Wow.
I mean, being in the car business for 20 plus years, I have the connections with the other brands, right?
Yes.
So I've had several customers that reached out to me and said, hey, I want this car. And I've sent them to friends of mine or people that I know, and then they buy the car.
Yeah.
A friend of mine here in Morgantown, their mother lives in California. And they wanted a Lexus. He calls me up. He's a good customer of mine. He's bought several cars from me. So he calls me up, says, hey, looking at Lexus, can you help? Yeah, here's the dealership. Here's the contact. Here's the price. Go drive it. If you like it, they'll deliver it, you know, or drive it somewhere else. If that's what you want, they'll deliver it to your house. And they drove, the dealership drove 150 miles to drop off the car. And then went, you know. And
Just
he
like
was
you drove to Florida, which
Yeah.
I'm still mind blown by.
And I didn't even
know
get
people did that.
So driving, that's funny. So driving to Florida, that whole entire trip, I stopped at Daytona on the way up. I stopped at Jacksonville on the way down, and I stopped at Jensen Beach. And the gentleman, when I stopped, his house is actually 1.5 miles from the actual beach.
Oh, nice.
That whole entire trip, I did not step foot in the sand because I'm like, I got to get back to work. I got to get back to work.
That's dedication right there.
Like, why? I just need to step out. I'm like, nope, I'm going to sleep and I'm going back to work.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'd be like, well, since I sat in the car for this long, I'm going to stretch my legs a little and on the beach.
That's right. Yeah. I should have. If I was smarter, I should have, but I didn't. I was like, why did I do that? I didn't step foot on the beach.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, it does speak to your character, and I enjoy that video. It's really cool just to watch you. You're testing out the features. You seem genuinely interested, and like you're learning as you're doing the drive.
Yep.
Like, well, you know, I've never done this before. I'm curious how far this car's going to make it, and you know, you've mapped out the charging stations and all that. It was really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that, you know, our customers are going to experience when they try to run it. So it was firsthand experience. It's my first time, and yeah, trust me, we still have a lot to learn with it. But it's an awesome technology, right? It's super cool. There's a lot going on with it, and you know, we just want to embrace it the best that we can. Is it the solution? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know if that's the end all be all. It's certainly pushing that way. But I don't know.
But you're educated about it, and something that I think I've already taken away from you as I've been listening to you so far is that I'm a big believer in nothing wasted. So even though maybe you took a step away for a while, it's not, that wasn't a waste in your journey, because then you could take those learnings. I learned about big business. I learned about, I'm sure many lessons, but then you could apply that to what you're doing now. And just like this example of driving the vehicle, you're able to use that information and share it with your team to help them be better as well.
Yeah. And that's, I think that we talked about the chip on my shoulder and how I learned it is finally I realized that, years ago, somebody told me, listen, it's a journey. Don't just go for the destination, right? So enjoy the journey and don't just wait until the destination, because we all work our whole entire lives towards retirement. If you wait until then to start enjoying life, it's too late. Yeah. So that whole journey you got to enjoy. And during that journey, if you open up your perspective, and this is the biggest part, you open up your perspective and just look at what's surrounding you. You have no idea how impactful you as an individual can be.
Yes.
Everything that you do, even when you think nobody's watching, somebody's watching. If you just toss a piece of trash at the trash can and it didn't make it, you may not realize it, but there might be a 3-year-old standing behind you walking up and go, oh, I guess that's okay.
Yes.
And it's not intentional. You didn't do it, but that's what happened. But the same thing, if you missed and you stopped and you walk over, you pick it up and you drop it off, maybe a 15-year-old behind you go, huh, that's weird. Why did they pick it up? There was other trash that was next to it, but he went and picked up his own, or she went and picked up her own trash. And you don't know what kind of influence that would have on that individual later on in life.
Never know. And you'll never probably hear about it either.
Right.
But yeah, small things like that can make a huge difference in terms of how you influence and impact people.
Yep. And I think that's the biggest part about leadership. It's so leadership to me, right, is not about that dictatorship, right? It's not about a title. It's not about, how much power you have. It's about influence. And influence is getting people to want to do the right things.
Yes.
Not because they have to, not because they need to, not because somebody's watching, but because they want to. They choose to. Without title, without power, without money, without any of it. If you're a true leader, when people follow you, that's when you know.
Yes. Yes. If they do it because they choose to and not because they have to, because you are the boss and you are telling them. But if it's, hey, this person maybe is or isn't in a position of power over me, but I want to do that. And I'm sure you've probably I know I've had leaders who I wanted to do a good job for. I wanted to run through a brick wall for because of how they treated me, honestly, is what it came down to.
Yep.
And other leaders who I did not want to run through a brick wall for.
Yeah. You want me to run through the brick wall? What kind of raise am I getting? What's the bonus structure, right? What is the trade-off?
Are you the brick wall?
Yeah. Versus, I don't care what you pay me. I know you're going to take care of me. And look, if that's the job that needs to be done, let's do it. We'll figure out. The money will come.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying about the business. I felt that we did the right things all the time. We didn't charge MSRP. We didn't charge over MSRP during this whole entire period.
When things went completely crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you could have.
Tellurides were going for $20,000 over MSRP. I mean, it was insane. And we had a customer that wanted to trade in a car. The market value on his it was funny because he ordered a 2022 Telluride from us. And he was going to trade in his 2020. The market value on his 2020 Telluride was higher than the MSRP of the 2022 Telluride that he was trading. And we told him, I'm not going to pay you to take away a new car.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, right?
No, does not make sense.
But it was there. But so those are conversations. But that's, where the increases came from, because we have customers from all over the country wanting to do business with us. We've already have repeat customers from Las Vegas. So they fly.
Oh, my goodness.
They'll fly out and drive the car. We'll pick them up at Pittsburgh Airport and they'll drive the car home. We've touched just about every state, including Hawaii, believe it or not. I don't know why that makes sense, but Hawaii, Florida, Georgia, upstate New York, Massachusetts.
How do they find you?
Through the internet.
Okay.
So if you look on Reddit, social media, anywhere, and you just Google Telluride, MSRP, you'll see reviews and
Oh my gosh.
you'll see our name out there. And so people will hunt us down and start, working and stuff. And like I said, we didn't overcharge the whole entire time. And we still have a wait list on some of our vehicles.
Wow.
But that, that has nothing to do with leadership.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
the business.
interesting though. But I mean, and I'm so fascinated by business too. So a lot of times my brain will go there too. But I will say though, something that is very interesting to me about your story is that I know you were in the dealership that you now own. So you worked in it.
Yep.
You were probably a percent partner before you became 100% owner,
Yep.
right? And that to me is a really interesting transition. If you think about leaders in their career journey, there's some of those key milestones or key transition points. Certainly the first time you ever lead people, which you were very young when you did that.
Yeah.
But another one is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume there were individuals that you were maybe closer to a peer level, or even just when you own a business, it is different regardless. So I'm just curious what that transition was like for you and how that may or may not have impacted your leadership style.
So for me, there wasn't that much of a change.
Okay.
So, because I led in a way that, look, these are the things that we should do. So when I was a manager anywhere, whether it's this store or anywhere else, I treated it like it's my own. When I made decisions, I made decision as if my money was on the line, my personal reputation's on the line, my character's on the line. It's not about making a paycheck. It's about doing the right things.
Yeah.
And I knew that if we did the right things, it's something that I've always believed in. If I did the right things, the money will follow.
Yes.
Right? It's like gravity, okay? If you throw the ball up, it's coming down.
Right.
There's nothing you could do to change that. But if you do the right things and you provide a service that people want, the money will follow. It's natural. All right? So you don't have to chase money. Just do the right things and provide a service that people want. So with my culture, my business partner now, he's my general manager, and he's going to be one of my first success stories of getting somebody up to the level. But he always tells me, he's like, people don't look at you that way. I'm like, what? I'm just Mike. Like, I'm not Mr. Lee. I'm not the owner.
Yes.
I'm not anybody. I'm just me. I'm still me.
Mm-hmm.
And I joke around with the guys and I have fun with them. So when I went from a manager to an owner, I'm still the same person and my door's still open. There's a level of respect, which I expect the same level of respect whether you're the janitor or you're a custodian or you're the detail guy or you're the owner. It doesn't matter. And we treat our customers the same way, whether you're a cash buyer, you're a finance guy, you're the president of the United States, you're Warren Buffett, you're my mother, you're my sister, you're my daughter. Everybody gets the same exact treatment. And that's the right treatment that we push forward. And if it's wrong, then we need to change it for everybody. It's not, I shouldn't treat anybody any different. So I expect the same back is don't treat me any different than anybody else.
Right.
And that, and if that treatment is wrong, I will correct you and you can take that through your whole entire life, right? Not just at the dealership. So at the dealership with my guys, I talk about it's an integration between work and life. It's not a work-life balance. I'm sorry to tell you. If you think that there's a work-life balance, you're wrong.
Makes me feel better because I can never figure out how to balance it anyway.
And if you think being an owner, you'll have a better work-life balance, you just married for the second time. For those of you that have been married, you just married a second time, and now you have two, spouses that are fighting, essentially. So there's no work-life balance per se, but there is definitely a work-life integration. All right. So you have to do the right things. And if you do the right things in life, you're going to have the right results in life. If you do the right things in business, you're going to have the right results in business. And really, if you do the right things, they're the same, whether it's business or life.
Yes, and the impacts crossover as well. If you're successful in business, it's going to impact your overall success in life and vice versa.
Yeah, you have a hard time at work, you're going to go home grumpy, and then it's going to ruin your home life, right? So now you have negatives on both.
Yeah.
If you have a good day at work, you're going to go home happy and you have a great time at home.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If you have a hard time at home because there's something that came up and you have a battle, when you come to work, you're going to bring that with you. And we know that life happens, right? So You got to take that into consideration. You got to think about it. And then it's up to us individually to decide how we're going to react to it. And that's some of the things that we teach and we work on every day. It's not just about, okay, how do you sell this person a car? How do you overcome rejection? How do you, handle the credit? How do you do the, how do you keep pushing this and make that sale? No, we talk about, hey, what's going on with your life? How can you, address this better so that you don't have that situation later? We work on being proactive all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious. It makes me think about just in your role as the owner, what is the day-to-day like for you? And what are the things that you're focusing on? Because to me, I'm always curious about any individual who's really at the top of the organization in terms of how that role can be a little bit different than if you were a sales manager or, still kind of in the weeds a little bit more.
Absolutely. I have been transitioning out of being I'm very hands-on, and that's part of being entrepreneurs. We're very type A and very hands-on. So getting out of the weeds was tough. But part of what we've been trying to do is if my goal is to replace, find my own replacement and train my own replacement, then I have to get out of the weeds because they have to do the things that I need to do.
Yes.
And they have to make the mistakes, and I have to be willing to allow them to make the mistakes. That transition is hard because, again, I'm so used to being in the day-to-day, knowing exactly what's going on. But you can step back and trust your people to do the work and know that if you have the right people, they have the right intentions, and that's a culture that you built at your organization, right? If you find that they're there because they need a job and they're just there to make money, I don't care how good they are at their job, that may not be the right person. If you're there because you have passionate people that want to help the clients, and that's at the end of the day, that's all we're doing, right? Every one of us, whether it's car sales or fast food or restaurant or engineering or architecture, we are helping the clients. If they know that they're there to use their skills to help the client, and they get compensated, that's a side result, if you will. That's not it is a direct result, but that's not the main reason that they're there. Then that flow is so different. But once you have that culture, it's actually pretty easy to step back, knowing that your people are there for the right reasons.
Yeah. Would you be willing to share some more tactical approaches to how you build that? Because that's something that has to be intentionally created. It's not like it just organically happens overnight. So if you're willing to share any tips, because this is something that's on top of mind for a lot of leaders.
Yeah. So the number one thing is it all starts at the interview. I believe in full transparency. Okay. So first step of the interview process, not to scare anybody away, but I'm going to. Here's the deal. We work a lot of hours, right? You're going to put in, and you're going to get a lot of rejection. And
that's so important. I never thought about that, but you're right. You have to be able to deal with that.
Lots of rejections, right? So we deal with a lot of rejections, but we're fully transparent in what we do. The culture here is we're willing to help other people. We're here to help people buy cars. We're going to have a lot of rejections. You're not going to make a ton of money in the beginning. It's going to take time to build. And just lay out the whole entire path for them from the very beginning, and also show them, all this hard work from the very beginning that you're building up. And over time, eventually, I'm willing personally to help you become a car dealer if you want to.
Wow.
Right. So my general manager, we're not scared about losing our jobs. Our job is to train our replacement.
Yes.
My goal is to find my replacement, be able to train them and train my replacement, because then, trust me when I tell you this world, this country has so much opportunity, right? That you can go out. Everybody knows of a dealer that's not the greatest. Everybody knows of a restaurant that's not the greatest. Everybody knows of a fast food restaurant that they wish they can change. We wish ice cream machines work all the time, right? But so there's so many different opportunities that you can go out into that don't worry about job security. If you just keep building, go find the next one, right? So that's one of the things that we're doing now. I'm doing now is I get to go out there and I get to find the next opportunity because I feel like my business partner, my general manager, is ready to take over my role.
It's amazing. But that again is intentional.
Yes,
you have to think about that.
Start from the very beginning, and you have to stay with your people every day, every week. You have to communicate with them. You have to talk to them. You got to. So communications, as we know, is 90% the words that are actually you're using doesn't matter, right? So then 20% is tone of voice, and at least 70% body language, right?
Yes.
So what you do in your interaction with your people every single day, and you talk to them, you have to be consistent. Like if you tell somebody that, hey, we're here to serve our customer, and I'm not, that money is not the ultimate goal. And then imagine if I go out there and a salesperson misses a sale and I ridicule them because they lost the sale because they could have made another $500.
How could you?
Yeah. And I'm just ripping them to shreds. Like that doesn't match, right? So the culture isn't there. So whatever you're trying to accomplish, and that is your culture, if that's who you are and that's what you're passionate about, if you stay consistent with it, then you find the people that match that consistency with you. And a lot of people will say yes in the beginning, and then it doesn't quite work out the way that they had imagined in their mind. It happens.
Yes.
It happens. But you got to still stay consistent with what your messaging is. And when you do that, over time, people will either adjust and adapt and learn and believe what you're doing. Again, a little bit by influence at a time. Then the wider that your team, the better that your team becomes, then it's easier to influence, right? So if I have 2 guys out of a team of 30 that believes what I'm saying, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But if I have 28 and I have 2 new guys, then I could get those 2 new guys to buy in a lot quicker.
They're going to get on board.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you make a really important point about the fact that you keep that consistency. And if someone's not aligned to it, it's not about suddenly bending and altering your culture for them, but more about, wait a second, maybe we have a mismatch and we need to talk about that. But I'm not going to cater and adjust for every single person, because then you have no culture.
Correct. And that's one of those things that we don't settle. We don't settle. And right now there's definitely a gap, for us hiring people in, what was considered good before is now considered great. I feel like, right? So what was considered acceptable and just meeting the bare minimum is now considered good. So the bars have changed, and having that conversation with your staff regularly to say, hey, this is my bar of what good looks like. This is my bar of what average looks like, so that you have the same definition going into it.
Yeah.
Right. That's a great start. So then you can start evaluating, because using those terms, example, I'm a automobile. Everybody walks in and says, I want a loaded car. I want one that's loaded. All right. And then I've ran into several times. What do you mean by loaded?
Ooh, yeah.
I want everything on it. Okay. So what do you mean by everything? Well, I want power windows, power door locks, keyless entry, automatic, and air conditioning.
That's not loaded.
That's a base car, right? At least, right? So to me, that is. But people didn't, the last time they bought a car, that stuff wasn't there. So that was loaded back in the day, right? So
now it's standard. It's the base.
Yeah, now it's standard. So what are those definitions? You have to define them regularly with your staff and with your with your people around you, including your family, including your relatives, whatever. I want to have a great time. What's your definition of a great time? I can't drink alcohol. My definition of great time is very different from a lot of other people, right? I will tell you that right off the bat. When they have a great time, usually means I'm miserable.
I was going to say, that's not a great time for you.
But I'm always invited because I'm the DD.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So setting those definitions helps you build that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love that you're clear about the expectations as well, because I do think that's a big miss sometimes in leadership is especially people jump into ripping someone to shreds about something because they didn't meet their expectations. But it's like, were you even clear in the beginning about what those expectations are?
Yeah, it's really hard to set those expectations. I mean, it's so, unless they do it and they've done it, it's so hard to get there. And, until you guys are on the same page, and that's not going to happen in 6 months to a year. It's just not. We
No.
come from different backgrounds. If you and I grew up together and we had the same high school, the same teachers and the same classes and the same parenting, then we know what our same expectations are, right? Even then, there might be a little gap because of what
Sure.
you're okay with versus what I'm okay with, maybe a little different. But
Yeah.
at least we have the baseline set.
Yes.
When everybody's coming from different areas and different backgrounds and different knowledge, who knows, and setting that up initially as a foundation of how do you gauge, as a leader.
But I think you're creating great opportunities. And by having maybe high standards or high expectations, you're giving people an opportunity to rise to their potential.
Yeah, and that was one of the challenges I had, was I always saw potential in people that they could do a lot more because of my background, right? So I mentioned that I'm first generation immigrant. So I was 8 years old when we moved to the United States, and
wow.
I had to learn English as a second language. My parents were watch and clockmakers, so we're like, I don't think we were technically middle class, probably lower, right? So we had the rabbit ears, the 3 channels. We didn't have cable. We didn't have video games. I had to work a week just to get a Huffy bike that I rode for 10 years. True story. I know you hear that all
the same childhood.
Yeah, right. So like,
I love those Huffy bikes.
so like, you don't. Without that background, if I can make it, then I believe that anybody can.
Yeah.
So I see that potential in people, and they're like, I don't want to work that hard.
Does that make you angry when you see that? Or what's your response to that?
It used to.
Okay.
It used to make me angry because there's talent. So there's talent and there's hard work, right? You can overcome a lot of talent issues with hard work. You can't overcome all of it. Right. No matter how hard that I worked in life growing up, I'm never going to be a Tom Brady. It's just not going to happen. It's not in my genetics. It's not going to happen, right? So there's talent and then there's hard work.
Yeah.
It's disappointing. I used to get mad because, like, man, you have all the opportunity. You have such a leg up in life than compared to most people, and you're not utilizing it. You're just wasting it. It used to make me mad. Now it just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit different where I'm sad because I see what they can do. I see what their future potential is. I see that they can be so much more. But I also realize that, we all operate at our own pace. Some people aren't ready for that. Some people will come to that later in life. Right. So KFC, Colonel Sanders. He didn't become Colonel Sanders until he was after retirement, 60 some odd years old. And then he made it big after that, right? Went door to door selling fried chicken.
Wow.
So everybody's different.
Yeah. They're on their own timeline and what they want and what their measure of success is. I mean, seeing that potential in them and what they could do versus do they want it, because it probably will require hard work as well. Yep. And you can't want it for someone.
Correct. Yeah, and that's why leadership is so hard. It's everybody has their own definition of what that strength is, and self-realization is the hardest thing about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. If you ask, most people will give you a couple of them, but deep down, is that truly what it is? If you ask that person what their strengths are, and then you ask their 10 closest friends, I'll bet you they're not the same, right? Most of the time.
That's so true. Yes.
and then you're like, okay, well, is that really my strength? So then if you're working from a position where, that's like getting a map of Chicago trying to run through New York at that point. It's not going to work.
Yeah. That's not helpful.
Yeah. So I think that I'm great at leading people, and all my friends are like, oh my God, he's the worst leader ever. Yeah. And I get myself into a leadership role. Again, it's the same as running through New York with a map of Chicago. Like, where am I going? You have no idea. Your foundation wasn't set right.
Yeah.
So going back deep inside yourself to recognize that, okay, am I really this? Do I really think I can do this? Do I need, and I can tell you we all need continue education, continue
Yes.
growth. We can always get better.
And awareness. I mean, we all have blind spots. So I can give you so many examples of exactly what you're talking about. Somebody sees something as a strength within themselves. Everybody else is like, no, not a strength for you. Yeah. And that's really hard because that person's walking through life. It's sad, actually, to me. They're walking through life thinking, I'm so gifted in this area. And they may be leaving a trail of bodies as they lead their way through wherever they're going. And so you gave a really good example of you were asking people for feedback. Yep. And I think that's huge too in terms of building awareness.
You have to have the guts, and that's the hardest part, is just recognizing that, look, at the end of the day, I don't care how great you are. You could be the best leader in the world. You're still going to have flaws.
Yeah.
You're human.
Yes.
Right. So, and that's a conversation I've had with my staff. They're like, well, you don't trust me. No, I do trust you. Mm-hmm. I also trust that you're human. Right. So why do I have duplications and processes in place? Well, it's because you don't trust me. Well, why am I checking behind you? Well, it's because you don't trust me. No. Are you perfect? Well, hell no, I'm not perfect, right? I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Great. So if I check behind you, and let's say you're 90, I'll give you 99%. That means 1 out of 100 of our customers are going to get upset because something's going to get missed. Mm-hmm. So let's assume the next guy behind you is 99% perfect as well. And that's super high standards, right? But now all of a sudden, instead of 1 out of 100, we have 1 out of 1,000 that might be impacted. And if I check behind that and we're also 99%, now we have 1 out of 10,000. Yes. I'm good with those odds.
Yes.
1 out of 100, not so much. 1 out of 10,000 or 100,000, yeah. I mean, that's acceptable. I think if you ask anybody, they'll be like,
take those odds.
Yeah,
yes.
Those flaw errors, we're going to chalk that up to an error. 1 out of 100, they may not. Some people expectation may be higher.
For sure.
So we always want to exceed their expectations. So we have redundancies built in. It's not about trust. It's about knowing that we're human. We're people.
Well, and you're actually trying to support them.
We're people. And so asking for criticism, the one thing that I will tell you is in the beginning, you're going to feel like, man, I feel so insecure asking these questions and I'm just being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Because the guy or the girl that you're asking the questions to, they're going to look at you and say, wow, well, what about me?
Yes.
Now, the biggest thing is don't get into a fight about it, okay? Don't get into an argument.
Right.
But just take it as criticism. Move on. Like, your reaction is important. Like, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And some of them may be true. Some of them may not be true. Some of them, it will affect you psychologically. You got to be strong. Yes. And just, say, okay, if 10 people have given me this feedback, let me try something a little bit different and see what the results are. And at the end of the day, though, when everything's said and done, there are things in life that I've worked on that the constructive criticism, the feedback that I've gotten has never changed. And the funny part about those is that's when I go, okay, hey Joe, I need your help. Can you handle this situation for me? Right? So I intentionally delegate those situations.
You know those things about yourself.
Because I know it's going to go bad. I'm not in the right frame of mind. And I'm just going to delegate it to somebody in my inner circle that is going to be able to handle that for me, that I know is really good at it.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. That's part of the learning.
It is. And it's part of managing. I feel like, I don't know if you know the Clifton Strengths model, but you're definitely explaining the Clifton Strengths model. So very well done. But a lot of it is investing in your strengths, matching what you're naturally talented at, and then applying the hard work to those things, as opposed to solely or just majority fixing weaknesses and focusing on weaknesses. Now, it doesn't mean ignore your weaknesses, because those can be career limiting, but being able to be aware of them, and then the awareness piece is huge. Then you can figure out what to do. Is it, all right, if I just shore up this little piece here, it won't be a weakness anymore? Or is it okay, you know what, this is a lifelong Achilles for me, and I'm going to structure my business or my team or whatever in such a way that it's a strength for someone else. So I'm going to have them do that work, and I'm going to remove myself from that situation because I'm not perfect, and they're better served for that conversation or task or whatever versus me.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll find that there are things that you can change leading up to that point, right? So you don't ever have that situation. You know, you. It's really difficult to handle that situation. So what am I doing to lead myself into that situation?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you wake up in the morning and you're used to walking left and you know you always walk into the wall, maybe the next house that you build put a doorway there, right? Like I mean,
Yes.
so then that's an easy fix, and you're always walking
Yes.
through the doorway
Just
instead of a
move
wall.
on. Yeah.
You know, something. It sounds so simple, but it really is. But you have to recognize it first. You know,
Yes.
and that's the
Yes.
start of
And
it.
then decide what you want to do about it.
Absolutely.
Gosh. So as I think about this is so good. I'm just so enjoying. You're really giving out a lot of great leadership lessons. So I appreciate that. Yeah. I know that you are really passionate about the community and you do a lot. And one of the reasons why I do this podcast is to expose people to different leaders from different walks of life who are demonstrating positive leadership, but also showing people where there are opportunities to lead. And so I think you are an example of someone who's really, you've seen the gaps, you've seen areas to step in and apply leadership. And I would just like for you to spend a little bit of time talking about some examples of that as a way to maybe encourage and inspire other people, how you've stepped forward and applied leadership to not necessarily just your day-to-day business, but impacting the community as well.
Well, you know, I joined BNI.
Oh, yeah.
And one of our members has as a magazine here locally, you know, a neighborhood magazine, and he wanted me to advertise with him, you know, through the car dealership. And I was like, that's not my medium as far as advertising for automotive. But we came up with a really, really creative way, and in collaboration, working with each other, we came up with a really creative way that I can contribute because I want to do business with him. He's a great guy. And I don't know if I'm allowed to mention my name, but
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
we do shout outs.
All right. So Kevin Armstrong with Stroll Cheat Lake, right? He does a great job with them. And Interaction Media is partnering with us as well. So we collaborated. Instead of me just advertising on there, we decided, hey, all the nonprofits around the area, the one thing that they lack is advertising. People don't necessarily know about them.
Yes, good point.
Because they don't have money for it.
Right.
All the money is going to...
They don't get grants for advertising.
Right.
Usually.
They have grants for services, and that needs to be provided. So people need to be made more aware of what's happening around us, what other positive things are happening. So I sponsor, Freedom Kia sponsors a article, Making a Difference, and we feature one nonprofit here locally, and then Interaction Media does a video shoot. So we create a little snippet of a video of what they do, and every month we publish it, you know, to raise awareness.
Yeah.
So people are aware. I don't do it because I want the recognition at Freedom Kia.
You're trying to sell a car because of it. Yeah.
I wanted a way to promote, you know, work with a fellow BNI member that does a great business to support him, and in turn we can support other communities. So it becomes a win-win-win, right?
I love a win-win scenario.
Another idea that we are working on, and it's been getting closer to a year now that we've been meeting, is we call ourselves a Mon County Nonprofit Collaborative. We just came up with a name. It's not branded. Go ahead and take the trademark if you want. I don't, you know, I'm not.
There's a lot of people that are going to race to do that.
That's okay. I'm not looking for a limelight. If you want to lead it, please, by all means, contact me. You can take it over, no charge, at all, and I'll even help you with it. So the goal was, you know, we see a lot of nonprofits that are always looking for donations and stuff like that. And then we have homeless situation here in Morgantown and all over the country.
Right.
As an immigrant myself, again, trying to get jobs and things like that. I'm like, man, there's got to be a way to help these people. There's something that's amiss when all businesses, I shouldn't say all, most businesses are looking for employees. And then we have a homeless population and people that need help with food because they're not making enough money and they can't support themselves. What is wrong with this picture? That doesn't seem to mesh for me. So we started meeting and we started talking in a little collaborative. And I've been personally going to each of the nonprofits and meeting with their directors and their board members and just asking them, you know, what is it that you're looking for besides money? Outside of money, obviously, you know, money.
Everybody's always looking for money. Yeah.
Supposedly money fixes everything. I'll tell you that is false. It makes things a lot easier, but but it's not true. So what can we do to help? What is it that you really need? And everybody mentions that, hey, the goal is for us to work ourselves out of a job so that way people can be self-sustaining. Cool. The goal is so that we can help the clients, and succeed in whatever they have in trajectory. And we want to be able to refer them. And we would love to collaborate with other, people that will work. Everybody was extremely welcoming. Nobody shut me down in talking to them about this collaboration. So we started a collaboration, and we're hoping to get some kind of summit going in July, maybe. I don't know if that's going to work out, but we want to get something together where all the nonprofits, could possibly meet and just talk to each other, say, hey, these are the services that we provide, and maybe somehow connect where we can share data and share resources, right? So for a Kia dealership, I'll use my business as an example. If I don't have a Kia part and I need one because my client needs one, I'm not going to call every single Kia dealership in the country by geographic location and ask them if they have the part. We have a system that we go in there and we look up saying, hey, I need this part. Who has it?
Yes.
Then I make the phone call to confirm that they have it and they ship it to us. Well, so nonprofits similarly, right? Hey, I'm out of ABC formula and my client's looking for it. Right now, there's multiple food pantries and nobody knows what their
inventory is, and
each individual food pantry might have a pretty solid idea.
Yes.
But the other food pantry in the area doesn't know what they have. They don't know if they're serving the same people multiple times. So part of the thing that I see is, I get it. Look, I'm here to help people. I want them to have the food that they need, right? We also have a drug issue that's happening. So what I've also seen is people have gotten multiple resources for food where they don't need the WIC and the food stamps. They end up selling them. They end up getting drugs. Then the kids end up, because they end up in jail, so the kids end up with the grandparents. And so the problem isn't the food. The problem is the process, right? So the food is just a Band-Aid of a really bad wound that will never heal.
Yes.
And if we
got to get to the root cause.
We don't get to the root cause, then it's not going to happen. So the collaborative, we're just talking about how we can help and how we can work together to get businesses involved, to get nonprofits working together, and then the city and the local governments working together. Not picking sides, because we got everybody in the trenches, community members, and everybody's welcome. We're not trying to do this to point fingers at anybody. We're just trying to come up with a better solution so we can solve this problem for everybody and create a better environment. They become contributors to society. They get a job. They pay taxes. It helps the government. They go to your shops and retail. They rent from you. They need furniture.
Member. Yes,
right?
Adding value. And that gives people a sense of purpose. But you're also coordinating effort across all of these different agencies. And I think if you look at any nonprofit, I mean, the pure heart and intention that goes into starting that nonprofit, you've got people who are working tirelessly for a particular cause. And at the end of the day, they're burning the midnight oil trying to meet the needs of their clients. And again, if there's a way to make it a little bit easier, a little bit better for them to do that, why not?
If we don't know how to help, other than just contributing money, I don't think that's the solution. I don't believe that that's the answer. I don't think putting more money into this, in the current system that we have is going to work. It's about solving the problem. What's the root cause? Is it going to be a one-man show? Heck no. I don't know the answer to it. How are we going to do it? I don't know the answer to it. I don't know if it can be. I think it can be done, but it will literally involve everybody. And it takes a village, right? And it takes a village. It takes everybody's support. And, talking about building culture, we're talking about
a whole community.
Yeah, a culture shift that we have to do. And look, not everybody's going to agree with me. I understand. We can have separate conversations about it, and I get it. I understand the other side as well. Look, if they need help, we should help them. I completely get that. We need to do that for so long until we we got to get some point where they have to want to do better.
Yeah.
I don't know what that line is. I don't know if there's a line. I don't know if that
Yeah.
line should be drawn, but we got to do better.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, potential. I mean, helping people to get to the place where they're able to contribute, where they're realizing their potential instead of, just maybe perpetuating a cycle that they are currently living in.
Yeah, and I've never dealt with addiction personally, right? So I don't know what that's like. If I can help somebody that has gone through addiction, for us to influence that community, people that have had that trouble. Me walking in there is gonna do absolutely nothing. They're gonna look at me like, dude, you own a car dealership. Who are you don't know you don't know what it's like, and. So I'm going to have zero influence on them by helping other people. And this is where we have to collaborate. We have to work together, understanding strengths and weaknesses. Part of my journey is I left my house when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
So technically I was considered homeless maybe. But again, people looking at me today, they're like, you don't know what that's like. You don't know what it's like to be homeless. You're right. I don't. I had friends, family friends that took me in and helped me out, along the way. And yeah, I can't relate the same way that you do. I've never had a tent that, that I lived in that scenario. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. But if I can help one or two people that have done that and have been through that, that know what it's like, then they can be the influence, the bridge that connects the communication of how we speak to each other,
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really inspired by your desire to make a difference, to have a positive impact. You're very much like, this is not about me. This is not about the business. This is truly about doing good and helping people. Is there a certain person or event that inspired that in you, or has that just been your default wiring? I mean, you're very committed to helping others.
My parents introduced me to Jesus very early in my life, and I had a break, a long break from that. Right, like I said, we all have flaws, and I always believe that that's part of who we are and what we need to do, but more so lately, I think that's part of what helped me get the chip off my shoulder, and seeing. If you reflect back on your life and how I got to where I am, me reflecting back how I got to where I am, I can vividly remember every step of the way, these images in my head of somebody to help me in this dire situation. I made a bad decision. I spent, my wife will love me for saying this. I spent the last $200 in our name when we first got together. We weren't even married yet. Last $200 in our name on Pokemon cards.
And you're still with her.
And we're still together. Now, one of my friends had to bail me out and loan me the $200. But I was probably 17 at the 8. No, I was 18 at the time, and
seemed like a good decision at the time. I'm sure.
Had it kept it's worth 20 grand today, but I threw it out, so it ended up being thrown out. See, again, a bad decision that ended up could have been good, and then another bad decision, that went away. So we all make these bad decisions, and we overcome them, right? And how do we respond to it? What do we do? And I think Christ has definitely been a huge inspiration. The religion, Christianity, for me personally, has been great. Just trying to do good for people.
Yeah.
It's by reflecting back of what people have done for me to help me get here. It's time, and I have an opportunity now, and I have the resources to help, and it's due.
Yeah.
And I can never repay back the families that helped me when I was 16. No matter, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, right? It's just the strain that you put somebody in. What is that worth for them to get you to an opportunity to what you have today? What is that?
Well, yeah, as you say, when you reflect on your life and all the things that had to happen in just a certain way to put you where you are, all of those things combined, if one thing would have changed, it just throws everything off course.
Right.
And those are all contribute to your story. But I'd love to hear your perspective on just thoughts, advice, tips that you would have for anyone listening on how they can demonstrate leadership and how they can have a positive influence.
The first step is just listen.
Mm-hmm.
That is the first step, is just listen. Listen to understand. Don't listen to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really, really hard.
Yes.
Really hard. So listen to understand. I fight with that every day still. But Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great book.
It is. It is. I mean, those principles still apply.
Yep. So that is a good start for me, for everybody, read that. But listening is the number one thing, and open your perspective.
Yeah.
Try to see it from a different perspective. Try to see the world from a different angle. Try to see it from a different, just look at it broader.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as narrow as you think it is. The world is, we're all connected a lot closer than you think we are.
Yes.
As big as the world is,
it's really small.
we're really connected, and, the amount of influence, and you may not think that you're a leader. You may not think that you have much influence, but everything that you do will impact somebody, some way, some shape, some form, and you won't even recognize it. You'll never get the thank you.
Mm-mm.
If it, very rarely,
Yes.
when you get, eventually you might.
Yeah.
And you won't necessarily see the negative impact that you have either. Right.
Ooh, that's an important point too.
So you won't get the positive or the negative feedback.
Yeah.
But you definitely have more influence than you think you do.
For sure. And you get to choose whether you have a positive or a negative influence. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that.
Yeah.
It is a choice.
Yep, absolutely.
Very good. Any final thoughts? This has been so good. I'm so excited that you're here today.
I think we went over on time.
It's all right. Hampton's used to it.
He might have to cut some
this
stuff out.
This is how I roll.
Yeah,
we talk about weaknesses, time management.
Yeah, there you go. Same. Yeah, people say this to me all the time. They're like, Mike, you're so efficient. You get things done. I'm like, all right, so here's the truth behind that line. My memory sucks. So if I don't do it right now,
I have to do it.
It doesn't get done.
Yeah.
So it's either I succeed or I failed right now.
Right now. I like that. Minute by minute, hour by hour.
And everyone's like, man, you're so efficient. Not by choice. It's because I have to be.
Trying to manage my memory skills here.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you so much. Can we do a lightning round before we close here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
It's a fun way.
Okay, so I heard about the lightning round. What's the number that I'm supposed to beat now? No,
I'm
kidding.
I knew you were competitive.
God.
I think the most that we've gotten through is 10.
10. Okay.
Yeah. I think the most we've gotten through is 10. So we'll see.
That's pretty impressive.
1 minute, to answer as many open-ended questions about you.
All right.
So, here, Mark, it's like, go.
All right.
What season best fits your personality?
Spring.
What's your most used emoji in text?
A laughing face.
Okay. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
7 Habits.
What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
I speak English as a second language.
Yeah, good one. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
food.
What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Bruce Lee.
Yeah. If you write a book, what would the title be?
Story of my life.
What is the most meaningful piece of clothing or jewelry that you own? Or you can do favorite room in your house.
Living room.
Okay. If you catch me by the fridge at night, I'm probably snacking.
Cookies and milk.
Yes. Best place you've traveled to?
Hawaii.
First job?
First job, sorting maps.
I think that was 10. Sorting maps?
Yeah. I was little. My parents were my parents had the watch and clock store next door. I don't know if I should mention this because I don't think it was within child labor laws.
It's okay.
We're just kids, so we're
past your statute of limitations right now, probably.
I think I was like 9, maybe. Again, learning English, 9 or 10, and learning English as a second language. So my parents had the watch and clock store, and next door was a map shop. And the guy, we're bored at the watch and clock store. Instead of learning how to fix watch and clocks, like we probably should have been doing, we get bored. And then he's like, well, I could use some help sorting maps. I mean, he had a ton of maps. And we got like a few bucks or whatever, and we're just sorting maps, help him organize it and everything. And then then he'll take like part of the pay, be like, I'll split a pizza with you. And keep in mind, we're little kids, right? So we had like 1 or 2 slices combined, and he had 3/4 of a pie, and we paid 50% of it on a. Anyway, that's why I said the child labor law.
This is working out.
It was an early lesson on negotiation.
Yes. Life skills while sorting maps.
Yeah.
It's a good first job. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. This has been wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's all the time we have for today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.